Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff, and I want to do finally the HTC One M8 review. I know that this review was a long time coming and I've gotten complaints. It's been 2 months and you haven't made a review yet. Well, actually, now I've had quite a bit of fair time to develop opinions so that I could make this review and have it actually hold water rather than just looking at a device, observing it for a few minutes, and bada bing, bada boom, there's a review. That's not how I operate anyway, so I'm going to be doing this review in 2 parts because I am in my itty bitty little French hotel room right now, and it's a little bit difficult to do an hour-long review. It's actually easier for me to do 2 different parts, so that's what I will do. I will try to get part 2 out as soon as possible. So let's go ahead and check out finally what the HTC One M8 offers. This is a device that I really love, and I want to tell you what I like about it, the things that I don't like about it, and everything else in between. I have named it affectionately Chef Gordon Ramsay because it looks like a kitchen appliance and the lights are doing something weird. So let's go ahead and check them out. So first I want to take a little bit of a look around the device. I want to talk about the build quality. My very first impression when I took this device out of the box was, wow, this is probably the best built Android device that I have ever seen. Everything is just so nicely cut to precision. I really have to commend them now for not using the injection molding along the bottom. There used to be the speaker piece right here, and then there was an injection molding and it was white, plasticky. So not only did it turn colors over time, but also it just wasn't cut very nicely. I saw some of the ports were a little bit jagged in places. And also on some of the models, there was a gap between that injection molding and where you see the speaker here. It was big enough on some of them, I exchanged it 3 times, to be able to stick my finger in between it, stick my fingernail rather. And to me, that looked quite cheap. So now everything looks like it's pretty much like a unibody design, and where we do have that injection molding plastic, it looks very premium. This is just for the antennas right here along the top and the bottom. Otherwise, all we have is this bit of plastic here, which I think gives it a nice contrasty touch. The only other separate pieces we have are, of course, the display and these 2 speakers on the top and bottom. One thing that I am noticing that's an issue for some people, because I have seen this myself, is that the volume rocker sometimes doesn't sit nice and firm in place. It tends to wobble around a bit. That is not the case on all of the devices. I can say that definitely from here. Mine is very, very firm. It doesn't go anywhere. There is no wobbling or shaking or anything. So if yours is doing that, I would definitely exchange that because this is not the case for all of the units. Now in terms of color, we have the amber version, we have this brushed aluminum finish, and then we also have a silver version which is a lot lighter. One thing that's disturbing to me is that this is a finish. It looks like a brushed aluminum, but it's really just a finish on top of aluminum. It's like an anodized finish of some kind. But what's disturbing to me is that I have found these marks here. This is actually where that finish has rubbed off. And the sad thing is that I have absolutely no recollection of where these came from. I have no idea whatsoever. I have kept this in its case pretty much the entire time. So I picked up my phone one day and said, oh, okay then. I have no recollection of how these happened. That sucks. So it seems that this can scratch fairly easily. This device has never been dropped. Unless I can blame airport security for taking it out of my bag and dropping it, I really have no idea how these happened, and that's quite concerning. I don't know if the same thing is going to happen to the amber version. It's more of a matte finish on it. But I really don't think that this type of thing is going to happen to the silver one, the one that looks like the M7. That's definitely the color that I would have chosen if they had it in the developer edition, but they didn't. So be wary of this. This device does seem to be able to scratch quite easily, and that finish does come off. So this device has a very nice, precise, industrial design. But if you want to keep the device perfect, I recommend getting a very nice protective case. I know that that's a little bit pathetic and pitiful because this device is very nice and attractive. But if you don't want to have any marks on this device at all, that's all that I could recommend. The good thing that I have seen though with this device is that I do like to poke around and watch some drop tests. Of course, I'm not going to do that myself on a device that I do like using. And it seems that this device does fare pretty well in the drop department. Sometimes with aluminum devices, when you drop them, you do get really strong dents inside the case, especially along the bottom. But what I've seen so far is that you get some chips in the device along the bottom or along the edges, but you don't get really smashed dings inside the casing, which is great. So this is a very nice, strong device. But the life of a device is that you're going to get marks here and there. So if you don't use a very protective case, be expecting this. Now, in terms of the glass on the front, this is Gorilla Glass 3. In my experience, Gorilla Glass 3 works really great against scratches. It's got what they call native damage resistance. So that means that they have a different molecular formation for the glass before they go to actually harden it. So in my experience, I've seen that only very light scratches tend to happen, as opposed to really deep scratches on earlier Gorilla Glass. But if you drop this device face down on the ground, please just seriously, be expecting it to just completely shatter like any other glass. It doesn't matter if it's Gorilla Glass 1, 2, or 3. My best solution always, if you're going to be keeping it bare and you at least don't want to put it in a case, get a glass tempered screen protector. That's probably the best protection you're going to be able to offer yourself, is by getting a glass screen protector that goes over it. That way, if you drop it on the ground, that glass screen protector cracks and the one underneath doesn't. I've actually tested that myself in a video from a while ago. And yes, these glass screen protectors really help. So if you want to keep admiring that beautiful body without a case, at least get yourself a glass screen protector or something like that. I will dare to say that I like the iLume screen protectors. You can see the link in the description if you want to check that out. I was using that for quite some time. I really did like it, but I took it off because I wasn't able to use it with the case very well. So taking a little bit more of a look around the device, we've got the power button. There's an IR blaster here. On the right-hand side, we've got the SIM card slot. You can see that this one is quite a bit bigger. If you take a look at the right side, you can see that we've got another slot here. This is for the micro SD card. I find this to be a little bit frustrating. I really wish I didn't have to have an ejection tool to get my SD card out. I found that to be pretty cumbersome. I often, and many people will often, not have the proper tool to get the SD card out at any time. So if you're someone who likes to take the SD card out and swap it with other devices, or if you need to use it for something else, just note that this is a little bit weird and you might need to keep some type of an ejection tool in your pocket, or at least keep that in mind. So the rest of the left-hand side is bare. Otherwise, on this right-hand side, we do have that volume rocker. Along the bottom, we've got the micro USB port. We've also got the standard headphone jack. On the back here, we've got a dual LED flash. You can see it's 2 different color temperatures to help with white balance in different lighting conditions. We've got a 4 megapixel camera on the back that is just completely infamous. Everybody knows about HTC's 4 megapixel cameras. Let's call it ultra pixel cameras. And then we have the extra sensor here for depth perception. Otherwise, I think that the device looks pretty clean. On the front, we've got stereo speakers. We've also got another camera on the front. This is a 5 megapixel front-facing camera. It's too bad that this 5 megapixel sensor isn't autofocus, because it actually takes pretty good pictures, and I end up wishing that this was the sensor that was on the back instead of the 4 megapixel one. And then we've got the proximity/ambient light sensor, and that's everything that we have here. The major thing that I see people complaining about is just how tall this device is. The excuse would be that we've got these speakers, which really does add to the addition of the height of this device so that you can fit that hardware in there. And then on top of it, we've got this HTC design down here. So it feels like very little of this device is actually display. Now, I have forgiven it that it's quite tall because it does feel very nice in hand. It is not a wide device by any means. And because it's not a wide device, it does feel nice in hand. So I have not been complaining so much about the height of this device because it's not a very wide device. But if we look at other devices, such as the LG G3, it's pretty much the same height. This is a 5.5-inch display. So you can see what the trade-off looks like here, having those stereo speakers on the front. We've got the 5-inch display versus the 5.5-inch display on the LG G3. And for anybody that has been messing around with a 5.5-inch display on a device, really can tell the difference. The screen stops here versus extending all the way out here. So it's your decision whether you want to jeopardize the screen size for having the speakers here, but the speakers are very nice. I really can't complain. I will get more into the speakers later, but just letting you see some of the trade-off here. Let's go ahead and look at some of the other devices in comparison for size. So here we have the Xperia Z2. The display size is 5.2 inches. And what's interesting about the Z2 is that it also has stereo speakers on the front, so you see that it is possible to have a little bit bigger of a display with stereo speakers, but there really is no comparison with the speakers here. So it's a little bit frustrating to have pretty much the smallest display on the market for flagship devices, but what you're getting in the entire package I think more than compensates for it. Now, getting into the usability of this device, one thing that immediately annoyed me is that the power button is at the top of the device again, just like on the M7. Now, this device is already very tall, so it's quite a stretch to have to put your finger all the way up here to turn on the device. I imagine if you have larger hands, it won't be much of an issue, but really it would have been more intuitive to have that power button on either side of the device. Now, I'm sure HTC realizes that they have a tall device here, so they've added a couple of motion launch gestures, some that I really do like. So if you double tap on the screen when it's off, it will activate the device and you're able to check for notifications. Now, as long as it's on the unlock screen, you can go ahead and double tap again and it will turn off. But if you double tap and unlock the device, you cannot double tap again to get the display to turn off. You have to make that extra effort to turn it off by the power button at the top. So I find that to be a little bit of a bummer. Also, these motion launch gestures are accelerometer activated, so the device has to sense that it's in movement, like it's being held first. Otherwise, this device won't activate with these gestures. So if I leave the device down on the desk and I don't touch it for a few seconds, if I tap the device, the display is not going to turn on. And I find that to be a little bit annoying because I like to put my device on the desk and I like to double tap the display like I can with the Z2 or the G2, and I like to be able to check the time or notifications. But no, the device has to be in motion in order to get this to launch. There is a little bit of a way around this, such as if you tap it quite hard, it will turn on, like you can see there. It doesn't happen every time. But you see, if you get the device moving, then tap it, it will turn on. So that's a little bit annoying and kind of gimmicky, but it is still possible to use the double tap feature without picking the phone up. You can use motion launch for a couple of other things. If you swipe from any side of the display, it's going to yield some result. If you go from the top of the display, you can make a call by simply using voice activation. If you go from the left side of the display, it will activate blink feeds so you can easily see some news and information from your favorite feeds. If you go from the right side of the display, it's going to unlock it so that you can see your launcher panel, your widgets, and your icons. My favorite one, and the one that I find most useful, that I actually use all the time and has made this device quite pleasurable to use, is when I have the display off, I can swipe up from the bottom. And what that does is simply just unlock the device and I'm able to resume whatever it was that I was doing. So just say I'm talking to someone on Google Hangouts and I have the device in my pocket. Instead of having to turn on the device and unlock it, I simply can just go up from the bottom and it will take me right back to what I was doing. So that's very useful, it's very, very quick, and I use it all the time. Another one that I use all the time is the quick launch for the camera. So if you hold the device, immediately hold it upward and hit the volume rocker, and you can see it activates the camera for you. So you can turn it off. Let's demonstrate that again. Hold it up and hit the volume rocker and it immediately activates the camera. So these motion launch gestures are really nice. They work very well. Now, one thing that I want to point out with usability as well is that I had to get myself this dot view case because it looked very hipster-like. It has some cool features such as being able to double tap, and you can see a preview of if there are any messages. That is, if it is an HTC application, then you can see if you have an email available, or you can see if there's a message available or a missed call. So that's actually quite cool. You can see that you're able to control volume right from here as well, all without having to actually open this flap here. And if you do open the flap, it's going to activate the display. Now the only thing is that you do lose some of those cool motion launch gestures that I really love so much. So if you go down from the top, you can still make a voice activated call. But obviously, with this display closed, you can't unlock the device and activate blink feed, you can't unlock the device and activate the launcher panel, and you certainly just can't unlock the device from the bottom. So all of those things are obvious and make sense, but what makes me really sad is that you lose the ability to use the quick launch for the camera. So if this device is closed, you can see it just simply isn't going to activate the camera anymore because you really do have to open it now in order to use it. So that alone has killed this case for me. I will get a different case for this device or just not use a case at all and would rather just use a glass screen protector. So this is cool, HTC and all, but also it doesn't lie flat. So when people text, it bounces around. It's very unstable. If you've got small enough hands, I've got very short fingers, I can simply put my hand underneath like this and then use the other hand to wrap it around just like that. And now I can type flat and the device doesn't bounce around, but that's not something that's going to work for everyone. And also this flap just simply bounces back like this, so you can't have it sitting open. So for some, it's just going to be useless. It's cool looking and all, that's awesome, but pretty useless. If I was to commend this case on anything, it would be that it makes the HTC One M8 less slippery. The M8 itself is incredibly slippery, and I'm quite often afraid that I might drop it. Now getting into the interface, I have to say that I really do like HTC Sense. I really love Blink Feed. Blink Feed was something that just tortured me to no end at the beginning. I was not able to disable it at first on the M7. Now you easily have the ability to get rid of Blink Feed. And they've actually made Blink Feed more usable as well. It's really nice that you can add services and apps. You can see what's going on with Google+, you can see what's going on with Twitter. Of course, you can add your favorite topics, headline news, technology. You can choose from a lot of different blogs. I find it to be very easy to use and out of the way. If I need to, I can compose right from here, just say something to Twitter. So I really like this. I think that it works quite well. I think that HTC did a good job here. I also love that this device is very nice and snappy. There really aren't very many animations to speak of, but I'd call this device very, very quick. I like that we always keep some apps at the bottom. Even if we're underneath Blink Feed, they always stay there. They're always accessible, even from the lock screen. I can easily get into the web browser. I can easily get into the phone to make a phone call. And of course, you can change these as well. They're simply changeable by just dragging and dropping whatever into there. So even if I turn off the display, you can see that it keeps itself there on the lock screen. So that's quite a nice touch. They have kept their app tray the way that it was before. You can choose your grid size, 3x4 or 4x5. I tend to like the 4x5, I can see more. But you can have it kind of a metro design if you'd like as well. You always have access to the Google Play Store. You also have the ability to search all of your applications. So this is really nice. I like this. I really do like what they've done here. They do have a bit of their own style here, such as underneath recent apps, you just flick. I think it's stylized, but it looks quite nice. It works well. You can easily cancel out all of the applications. Or you can get underneath your running services. One of the things that I really don't like, and what I haven't liked from the M7 and what they haven't changed, is how they organize power. When you go underneath power, if you go underneath history, I really can't see too much what's going on and what's using the battery. Such as if I wanted to see what my actual screen on time is, I can see a bit of an estimate. You can see these little dots here, but it really is nondescript, and I wish that they would have kept stock Android look on here. Now, just like what we have on the Galaxy S5, we have an extreme power saving mode that just limits everything. So by turning on extreme power saving mode, it extends battery life by conserving CPU usage, reducing screen brightness, turning off vibration feedback, turning off data connection when screen is off, allowing only essential apps to run. That's where it's just like the Galaxy S5, turning off the pedometer. So you're able to immediately activate this, or you can schedule it, such as if the battery is at 10% or at 5%, it will activate it this way. And that way the battery will last longer for you. I'm not seeing a way to actually choose which apps I can put inside here, but it's really just the essentials. Go ahead and hit exit. So that's a nice feature. You also have a regular power saving mode, which you can choose to limit CPU power, you can reduce display brightness, you can turn off vibration feedback, and you can put your data connection to sleep when the display is off. So overall, I have been quite pleased. I think HTC has put a lot of features on here, and for the most part, it's very easy to use. The presentation is very nice, and I love how fast and zippy that this is. So I find myself using this device a lot because I really like the interface and how it works. So now I want to talk about the display. It's bright, it's vibrant. I think that a lot of people are really going to like it. And at 5 inches, it's 441 pixels per inch, so it's very pixel dense, especially compared to a lot of other 1080p devices. And also, the image just seems to pop out towards your face. That's something that I really loved on the M7, and it's the same thing on the M8. I'm also really enjoying that the viewing angles are very nice, so I am overall very happy with this display. The biggest gripe that I have when looking at this display is that the color temperature is actually kind of blue. I would say it's really more on the cool side. And when looking at other M8 devices, I've seen that some of the color temperatures do seem to vary. So the one I have right here is more on the cool side, whereas other ones I've seen are a little bit warmer than this. Maybe that has to do with the factory calibration. Maybe that has to do with possibly a different panel manufacturer. I'm really not sure. But I really am not so happy with the cool temperature of this display. So let's go ahead and take a look at some measurements of this display. When looking at a display, you can't just use your eyes. Of course, you can have your opinion about how you think a display looks with your eyes, but it's also good to have an objective way of looking at a display as well, and that's done by taking some measurements. I've done this with a program that's called HCFR, and also a colorimeter that has a chance to look at what's going on with the calibration of this device. So I've done two things, looked at the color accuracy and also the grayscale calibration as well. So this display is very bright, it's very punchy, and HTC doesn't really shoot for color accuracy, but they have an interesting effect going on. I can't exactly explain what they've done. We've got all these dots here, and every dot stands for a saturation point. Let's just look at blue, for example. Right here is 0% saturation, or no blue. You've got just say 50% saturation, and then you've got 100% saturation, or the highest amount of blue that you're going to be able to achieve. So when you see these dots, they should be evenly spaced, but you can see with the blue, the HTC takes the blue and they push all these saturation dots more close to the most saturated blue. So of course, we can see that HTC is oversaturating the blues. It gets blues to look more punchy, gets them to stand out. People like this effect, but just know that it's not color accurate. Then you can see for the green that they might be pushing the greens, trying to get them to be a little bit more saturated as well. But what it actually looks like is that as the saturation is increasing towards 100% green, that they're changing the hue a little bit. I can't explain exactly why they do this. They're just changing the color as the saturation increases. They are shifting the yellows as well. They're just taking them and shifting them over. And I really don't know what they're doing here for cyan. They decided one thing and then they blip it towards another direction. I can't exactly say why. So HTC did not aim for color accuracy. They're trying to achieve some desired color effect. I can't exactly explain the method to their madness. If you like how it looks, great. But at least I can explain to you why it's not accurate. Then I can also look at the grayscale calibration. What we have on this side are the dark parts of an image, and on this side we have the very light parts of an image, or white highlights. So with the gamma curve, it's best if it's along the 2.2 line. And once you start messing around with the gamma, the look of the image can change. So for example, if you take gamma and you make it go higher, not only do you saturate the image more, but you also make an image a bit darker. And if you do the opposite and make gamma lower, it can wash out colors and also make them lighter. So we have an interesting curve here. We'd call this more of an S curve. We can see that HTC is trying to make the highlights pop more, trying to make them brighter. So I would say it creates an interesting contrast. To my eyes, it really doesn't look so bad. It's an interesting effect. It's really, again, up to your opinion if you like it. But again, you can see that they're doing some tweaking. The calibration is not accurate. It should be more along the 2.2 line. What I am happy about is that this display has a good contrast ratio. It's somewhere around 1,000 to 1. This means that it's the difference between the darkest darks and the brightest brights. And a contrast ratio around 1,000 or even more than 1,000 makes really nice dark blacks. So overall, I think HTC is doing some interesting things with this display. It definitely does stand out. It does pop. I think that despite what they're doing with some of the weird colors and a bit of oversaturation, that it would look a lot nicer if it didn't have that really blue color temperature. Now moving right along to talking about battery life, this is the last thing that I want to talk about before I move on to part 2 of this review. Now I realize that I didn't put up a full review of the M7 device, but I did play with it quite a bit, and one of the most disappointing things that I saw about that device is that the battery life really wasn't so good. I struggled to get through the day if I did anything strenuous with the device at all, such as using the camera, or if I played some games. It really struggled sometimes to last through the day. I found myself putting it on power saving mode to limit the CPU, among other things, just to get it to last sometimes. I'm happy to say that this is not a problem whatsoever with the M8 device. I'm getting very good battery life. Now this isn't the best estimate that I have gotten, but I can say that I'm easily able to get about 5 hours of screen on time. A lot of the times I get even more than 5 hours of on-screen time. I can easily get through the day, 18-hour day, 19-hour day. It really isn't a problem. We still have power saving modes. You've got the ultra power saving mode if you get yourself in a bind. It's quite impressive with the 2600 milliamp hour battery that it does this well, although it does have a smaller display at 5 inches than a lot of the other flagship phones, or I think pretty much all the other flagship phones at this point. It's got the smallest display. So you'd think, why not? Why couldn't it last through the day? And it definitely does. So on a typical day, I use my phone like crazy. It's my mobile office. I do everything from being on Wi-Fi, LTE, watching Netflix, watching YouTube, taking videos, taking pictures, playing games. I do everything imaginable with my device. So I really abuse it, and I'm happy to say that this is definitely abuse-worthy. That doesn't sound right. It definitely lasts me. That's better. Snapdragon 600 just really wasn't so great with battery life, but with Snapdragon 801, it's doing so much better, even with that small 2600 milliamp hour battery. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to try to get part 2 out as quickly as I possibly can. I've been in France, I've been spending time with my fiance, and I've also gotten a huge influx of new phones. There's been so much to do. So please forgive me, hang tight, I will get that out for you. I will be talking about performance, I will be talking about the camera, and I will be showing a few other things. If there is anything in this video that you see that I am missing, please ask the question so that I can try to incorporate it in part 2. Also, I would really appreciate it if you would follow my link in the description for Google+. On Google+, I talk about a lot of things with devices as I'm reviewing them. So that's kind of the behind the scenes. I will post all kinds of things as I'm using a device in my real life usage situations. So definitely, please check out my Google Plus page. People ask me questions, and I tend to look at a lot of those questions and incorporate those questions in my review. So that's definitely the place to look. So again, thank you everyone so much for watching. So far, I think that this is a great device. I have really enjoyed using this device. It's one of the devices that I use the most because I love the build quality, I love the battery life, and the display is still quite nice. The interface is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, to use. So I definitely recommend giving this device a chance and checking it out. So hang tight and have a good night, everyone.